the storm on Viharis Prime had a mind of its own. Commander Ethan Reeves gripped the controls of the Terran dropship, his knuckles white as the ship bucked and twisted through the dense clouds. The turbulence was relentless, the whole craft shaking as if it might tear apart at any second. Outside, the skies were dark, swirling purple and crimson, crackling with energy, lightning shooting from the clouds like angry fingers. "Shit," Ethan muttered under his breath, trying to steady the ship. His breath came in quick bursts, adrenaline pumping through his veins. The warning lights on his console blinked, red and furious, a constant reminder that this wasn't supposed to happen. He wasn't supposed to crash. Not here, not on this godforsaken planet. The storm was supposed to be manageable, but the gravity on Viharis Prime was unlike anything they'd faced before, making everything 10 times more dangerous. And the atmospheric pressure, it was a whole new nightmare that the sensors couldn't even begin to map. Still, the mission had to go on. They had to deliver their cargo, make contact with the alien civilization. It was supposed to be routine. But now, the ship was spinning out of control, the roar of the engines mixed with the howl of the storm. "Brace for impact," Ethan shouted into the comms, but his voice barely reached his crew through the static. He could hear their muffled responses, panic in their voices. Suddenly, the world turned sideways. The ship lurched hard to the left, sending Ethan's stomach into his throat. He tried to pull up to steady the craft, but the controls were slipping from his grasp. Everything was slipping. With a deafening crash, the ground came up to meet them. Ethan's world exploded in fire and metal as the ship slammed into the jungle below. The impact threw him forward, slamming him into the console with a sickening crack. His vision went black. When Ethan's eyes fluttered open, everything was a haze of color and sound. He could barely make sense of what was happening. His head throbbed, blood trickling down the side of his face, his vision blurry. Through the cracked helmet, he could see the jagged remains of the ship scattered around him, twisted metal, sparks, and smoke. The smell of burning fuel mixed with something else, something sweet, like thick, moist earth. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body. His ribs screamed in protest, and he collapsed back onto the ground, gasping for breath. He reached up with a shaky hand to touch his helmet and found it cracked, a jagged line running across the visor. The comms were silent. "Shit, shit," he muttered, pushing himself to his feet despite the pain. His arm was broken, his leg was twisted at an odd angle, but he was still alive. His heart was still beating. He needed to find his crew. The jungle around him was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The trees were tall and strange, their trunks thick with vines that glowed a soft blue. The air was thick with mist, and the ground was soft, like walking on spongy moss. There were no familiar signs of human life here, no cities, no roads, no markings, just raw, untamed wilderness. Ethan limped forward, clutching his side, blood dripping from his arm. He was in no condition to fight. His training had taught him to be tough, but he wasn't invincible. Not anymore. He couldn't let his team down. Through the mist, he heard something, low voices, a hum of something that didn't sound human. Instinct kicked in. He moved toward the sound, pushing his broken body through the thick underbrush. A figure appeared before him, emerging from the trees like a shadow. It was tall, towering over him, and its skin was a strange obsidian black, shimmering with an ethereal light. The being's eyes glowed, their light soft and steady, like two moons rising above a dark ocean. Ethan froze, his breath catching in his throat. It was alien, not just an alien, but something else. A presence unlike anything he had ever felt. The air itself seemed to hum around it. "You are the human," the being said, its voice deep and resonant, almost musical. It wasn't a language he recognized. But somehow, Ethan understood. His mind buzzed with something beyond words. The being stepped closer, its glowing eyes studying him. Its form was sleek, graceful, like a living statue. Its face was angular, sharp, and impossibly beautiful, with features that seemed both familiar and foreign. I'm not your enemy, Ethan said, his voice hoarse and strained. He gritted his teeth, trying to keep his balance. I need to find my team. Please, I'm not here to hurt you. The alien blinked, its expression unreadable. The air between them crackled with an energy Ethan couldn't understand, something ancient and powerful. It tilted its head slightly, as if considering his words. You are broken. Ethan chuckled weakly, despite the pain. Yeah, you could say that. The alien stepped forward again, its long limbs moving with a fluidity that was almost hypnotic. With one graceful motion, it reached down and touched his arm, its fingers glowing faintly. The touch was gentle, but Ethan could feel an electric shock run through his body, and for a moment it felt like the world was spinning again. But then the pain in his arm eased and his vision sharpened. He gasped, as if the very essence of life had returned to him in that instant. It wasn't healing, not in the way he knew it. This was something different, something otherworldly. The alien spoke again, its voice softer now. You are not like others. You are strange. Ethan tried to stand taller, though his body still screamed in protest. Yeah, well, that's humans for you. We're strange. But I'll fight for those who need me. The alien's gaze softened, and for the first time Ethan saw something: curiosity, pity, compassion. Whatever it was, it made his heart race. He hadn't expected this. Not from an alien, not from a species that could have easily wiped him out in an instant. I will help you, it said, its voice quiet but certain. But you must follow. Without another word, the alien turned and began to walk away, its body disappearing into the mist of the jungle. Ethan hesitated for a moment, unsure if he could trust this being. But his instincts told him something he hadn't expected. He had no choice. He followed. And as he limped after the figure, the pain in his side seemed a little less important. For the first time since the crash, Ethan felt the faintest flicker of hope. Ethan stumbled through the dense jungle behind the alien. His ribs burned with each breath, and his leg felt like it was going to give out at any moment. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when he had a chance to survive. Not when his team was still out there, waiting for him to come back. The alien, with its obsidian skin and glowing eyes, moved effortlessly through the thick underbrush. It was as if the jungle itself parted before it. Ethan, on the other hand, felt every step. His body protested, his vision blurred, but he kept going. He had to. As they walked, the mist thickened around them, wrapping the jungle in a silvery haze. The air was heavy, full of strange sounds, chirps, clicks, and low growls from creatures unseen. Yet the alien moved with such grace that it seemed like a part of the jungle itself, untouched by the wild chaos around them. Ethan's mind raced as he tried to make sense of everything. First, there was the crash, the storm, and then the alien. The way it had looked at him, the way it had healed him, even if just for a moment. He didn't know what to think. What was it? Was it an alien or something else entirely? And why did it help him? He was just a human, nothing special, just another soldier on a mission. The alien glanced back at him, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly. You are injured. Ethan gave a weak smile. You don't say. The alien didn't respond. It simply turned its gaze forward again, continuing its path through the jungle. Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange connection to it. It was so different, yet oddly familiar. There was a quiet strength in its presence, something he couldn't explain. It wasn't like any alien he'd read about or fought against. This one, this being, was something else. After what felt like hours of walking, the alien finally stopped at the edge of a massive clearing. The air was thick with energy, and Ethan could feel the ground beneath him hum. At the center of the clearing stood a structure, a huge, intricate building made of stone and crystal. The walls shimmered with a soft, otherworldly glow, like the sky itself had been woven into the fabric of the place. This is the heart of the Viharan Dominion, the alien said, its voice soft but filled with authority. My home. Ethan looked at the structure, awe settling in his chest. It was beautiful, majestic, and terrifying at the same time. It didn't look like anything humans had ever built. The stone seemed to shift and breathe, almost alive as if it were a living thing, not just material. And the air around it was thick with power, something ancient and deep. "What is it?" Ethan asked, still struggling to catch his breath. His legs were about to give out, and he leaned heavily against a nearby tree for support. "The place where my people dwell," the alien replied. "We call it Viharis Heart." Ethan swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. "I don't understand. Why are you helping me? I'm just one human. What do you want with me?" The alien turned to face him then, its glowing eyes studying him with an intensity that made him shiver. "You are not just a human," it said quietly, almost as if it were thinking aloud. "There is something different about you." Before Ethan could respond, the ground shook beneath him. The trees trembled, their roots shifting as if they were alive. The distant rumble of thunder echoed across the sky, but this wasn't from the storm. Something was happening. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, panic creeping into his voice. The alien's expression hardened. "It is the warning. The rival clan is coming." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Rival clan. He barely had the strength to walk, let alone fight off some alien enemies. But he wasn't about to just lie down and die. Not when there was a chance to make it out alive. "Rival clan," he repeated, trying to keep his voice steady. "How long do we have?" The alien's eyes flickered briefly, and then it gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "We must go inside, quickly." With that, the alien led him toward the entrance of the massive structure. As they approached, Ethan could see that the walls of the building seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. The stone doors slid open without a sound, revealing an interior bathed in a soft, golden light. Ethan stepped inside, still clutching his side, and immediately felt the change in the air. It was warmer here, the air fresher, almost alive with energy. Strange, floating lights drifted through the space, casting shifting shadows across the walls. The building was full of intricate carvings, ancient symbols and patterns that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "This is incredible," Ethan whispered, taking it all in. "You are safe here for now," the alien said, "but the danger is not gone." Ethan didn't ask any more questions. He was too exhausted, too beaten down to think clearly. The only thing on his mind was survival, his own and his crew's. He had to get back to them. He had to make sure they were okay. As he leaned against the nearest wall, trying to catch his breath, the alien turned to him again. Its expression softened, and for the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of something human. Something more than just a cold, calculating warrior. "You will survive," the alien said softly. "I will ensure it." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything." The alien hesitated for a long moment before replying. "I do not owe you anything, but I feel it too. The need to protect, to defend. Perhaps we are not so different." Ethan was too tired to argue. Instead, he just nodded, his gaze locking with the alien. He didn't know what to make of it, but somehow he understood. They weren't so different after all. Then the ground shook again, harder this time. The walls trembled and a deep, growling noise echoed from outside. The alien's eyes snapped toward the door, the soft light in the room flickering with the sound. "They are here," the alien said, its voice now filled with a quiet urgency. "Stay close, do not move." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he braced himself for whatever was coming. He had no idea what to expect, but one thing was certain. This was no longer just a mission to survive. It was something more. And whether he liked it or not, he was part of something far bigger than himself now. The storm outside raged on, but inside it was silent. And as the alien queen, Viharari, turned toward him, Ethan knew his journey had only just begun. Ethan had no idea how long he had been lying there on the cold, smooth floor of the alien citadel. He couldn't keep track of time. His body hurt, his thoughts blurred, and every movement felt like his muscles were being torn apart. His arm was still broken, his ribs still bruised, and the pain was relentless. but somehow he was alive. And that was thanks to her. Viharari, the alien he had first encountered, stood in front of him now. The alien queen. She had led him into this place, a sanctuary of strange light and strange energy. Her tall, graceful form was framed by the glowing walls, her eyes soft but intense, as if they could see right through him. For all the power she held, for all the strange beauty that surrounded her, she radiated something else, something that Ethan hadn't expected to feel from an alien, a quiet kind of concern. The moment she had brought him here, he had collapsed from exhaustion. And now, after what felt like hours, he was regaining his strength. But it wasn't just his body that was healing. It was something deeper, something unexplainable. "I know you are in pain," Viharari said, her voice a low hum in the stillness of the room. She knelt beside him, her fingers brushing over his shattered arm. Her touch was light, like the stroke of a breeze, yet there was an undeniable warmth to it, as if something alive flowed through her fingertips. "Yeah, you could say that," Ethan muttered, trying to grin despite the agony that pulsed through him. He couldn't make sense of how she'd managed to help him earlier. She had touched him and something had happened, something beyond understanding. Viharari's silver tendrils, which hung like a crown from her head, shifted, glowing faintly. She was studying him intently, her eyes flicking to his arm and then to his face. "You are not like the others," she said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. "You are strong despite your wounds. Most would have surrendered to death by now. Why do you fight?" Ethan swallowed, looking up at her. He had no idea how to answer. He wasn't sure he fully understood it himself. He had been trained to survive, to never give up, to protect his team. It was something he had always known. But here, on this strange planet, in this impossible situation, his reasons felt different. "I fight for my people," he said simply. "For my crew, I promised them I'd make it back." He paused, meeting her eyes. "You're not so different, are you?" Her eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment the regal air around her seemed to slip. There was something in her expression, something human, maybe even familiar. She studied him, her gaze searching, as if trying to read him in ways her advanced technology couldn't. "I was wrong to assume you were like the others," she said quietly. "You are different." She turned her gaze down to his broken arm and reached for it again. "Let me help you heal," she whispered. Ethan wasn't sure how it worked, or if it was even possible, but the pain in his arm suddenly eased. The edges of the broken bone seemed to move, realigning themselves, while the skin knitted back together. He winced slightly, but the relief was almost immediate, like someone had taken a weight off his shoulders. "How are you doing that?" he asked, staring at her in disbelief. "That's not possible. This is insane." Viharari didn't look at him as she focused on her work. "It is not science, not as you understand it. It is something older, a power that flows through all things." She finished with his arm and moved to his chest, her hands hovering just above his skin. "Your body is not made for this healing. It resists it. But I can see the fire inside you, the will to survive." Ethan tried to laugh, but the pain in his chest made it impossible. "Guess I'm not ready to die just yet." Her eyes flicked up to meet his, and for a brief moment there was something in her expression he couldn't place. It wasn't pity and it wasn't sympathy. It was something deeper, something personal. "Perhaps I am not ready for you to die either," she replied, almost in a whisper. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The alien queen, the ruler of an entire species, was concerned about him, a human. It didn't make sense, but somehow he believed her. Her hands moved across his body, slowly, deliberately, and with every touch his pain seemed to fade. His broken ribs started to mend, the sharp agony in his chest easing, replaced by a warmth that spread throughout his entire body. "Does it hurt?" she asked, her voice softer now. "A little," Ethan admitted, but it was more of a dull throb than the intense, burning pain he had felt before. "But it's nothing compared to what it was." Viharari nodded, her face unreadable. "You should rest," she said, standing up. "You will need strength for what is to come." Ethan didn't know what she meant by that, but his body had other ideas. The healing process was exhausting. His limbs felt like lead, and every movement made him dizzy. "I just need a few minutes," he muttered, sinking back onto the floor. "Sleep," she said. "It is not a suggestion." He wanted to argue, but his body refused to cooperate. Within seconds, his eyes closed, and he drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep. When Ethan awoke, he was still in the same place, lying on a soft bed of woven alien fibers. The light around him was dim but soothing, like the soft glow of stars in the distance. He could feel the lingering warmth of Viharari's healing touch, still alive inside him. His body felt lighter, less broken, but he knew the worst was far from over. Sitting up, he saw her, Viharari, standing at the far side of the room, her silver tendrils catching the light, her back turned as she stared out into the distance. "Are we safe here?" Ethan asked, his voice rough. She didn't turn to look at him, for now. He frowned. "What's coming, Viharari? Why do you keep saying 'for now'?" Her gaze remained fixed on the distant horizon. "The rival clan approaches, and they will not be merciful." She paused, her voice hardening. "You will need to fight." Ethan rose to his feet, suddenly feeling the weight of his responsibility again. "Then I'll fight." He had no idea what the future held or how he could possibly survive what was coming. But one thing was certain, he wasn't backing down. Not now. Not after everything he'd been through. Not after everything she had done for him. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. Viharari turned toward him then, her eyes meeting his with something that could have been respect, or something deeper. "Good. I would not want to fight beside anyone else." Ethan stood tall despite his still healing body. "Then let's get ready." There was no more time for questions, only the fight ahead. And in that moment, Ethan realized something important. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for something far greater. The air in the citadel grew tense. Every breath felt heavier than the last. Every shadow seemed to grow longer. Ethan could feel it, the change in the atmosphere, the unspoken urgency in Viharari's movements. She was standing by the door now, her silver tendrils glowing softly, her expression unreadable. The quiet hum of energy in the room was interrupted by the distant sound of drums, low, rhythmic, and unsettling. Ethan had heard them before, back in the jungle, but now they were closer, much closer. "The rival clan is here," Viharari said, her voice steady but filled with an edge of something else, determination. "They will not stop until they have what they want." Ethan swallowed, his chest tightening as he stood up, his body still sore but somehow stronger. His broken arm had healed, but his ribs still ached with every breath. He glanced around the room, taking in the strange surroundings, the glowing walls, the soft hum of power, and for a moment he wondered how much time they had left. "How long?" he asked, already knowing the answer wasn't going to be in his favor. "Minutes," she replied shortly. "They are preparing for the final assault. They know we are here." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. "What are we going to do?" Viharari turned to face him, her glowing eyes steady. "We fight. You will fight beside me." Ethan couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. "You're trusting me, after everything." She nodded slowly. "I would trust no one else." A strange warmth filled Ethan's chest at her words, but it was quickly replaced by cold determination. He wasn't going to let this alien world, and this alien queen, fall to another species. He didn't know what exactly had brought him here, but one thing was clear. He wasn't just some outsider. He was part of this fight now, part of something greater. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves that were building in his stomach. Viharari's gaze softened slightly. "Then we prepare." The sound of the drums grew louder, each beat sending a ripple of fear through the air. The walls of the citadel seemed to hum with an ancient energy as the two of them moved through the halls. Ethan wasn't sure what to expect, but he could feel the tension in the air. The enemy was close. They reached the central chamber, a vast hall filled with tall columns that glowed with soft, shifting light. At the far end of the room, a large set of doors stood wide open, leading into the heart of the citadel. It was a place of power, ancient and strong, yet now it felt vulnerable. Viharari turned to him, her eyes serious. "You will defend this door with your life," she said. "I will fight alongside you, but this is your task. Do not let them pass." Ethan nodded, tightening his grip on the weapon she had given him, a strange, alien rifle that hummed with power. It felt unnatural in his hands, but he didn't have time to think about that now. There was no room for fear, only action. "Understood," he said, his voice rough. "I won't let them through." Viharari didn't speak again, but her eyes locked onto his for a long moment. There was something in them, something that made Ethan's heart race. She wasn't just the queen of her people. She wasn't just some distant ruler. In that moment, she felt like something more, something human. Then, without another word, she stepped into the hallway, her silver tendrils trailing behind her like a glowing veil. Ethan followed her, feeling the weight of his responsibility on his shoulders. He wasn't sure how much help he could be. He wasn't even sure he was ready for what was coming. But one thing was certain: he wasn't backing down. The sound of boots hitting the ground echoed in the distance. The enemy was here. They came in a wave, alien warriors, tall and menacing, their dark forms cutting through the mist that had settled in the hallways. Their armor gleamed in the soft light, sharp and sleek. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural hunger, filled with a thirst for conquest. They were merciless, and they were relentless. The first one charged forward, its blade raised high. Ethan barely had time to react, his body moving on instinct. He fired the alien rifle. The blast hit the warrior square in the chest, knocking it back with an explosive force. But there was no time to celebrate. The enemy was coming in waves, and Ethan was struggling to keep up. Viharari moved beside him, her own weapon flashing with deadly precision. She was a whirlwind of motion, her movements fluid and graceful, each strike bringing down an enemy with cold efficiency. But Ethan could see the strain in her eyes. She was powerful, yes, but she was still a queen, not a soldier. "We cannot hold them back alone," Viharari said, her voice clipped as she parried an enemy strike. "You must fight harder." "I'm trying," Ethan shouted, firing again, his aim shaky but true. The enemy kept coming, wave after wave, and Ethan began to lose track of time. His body was aching, his arms burning from the weight of the weapon, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Not when he had a promise to keep. Not when he had a chance to make it out of this. But the enemies were overwhelming. They were too many. And Ethan was starting to see the cracks in his own resolve. His hands were shaking, his movements slowing. He could feel his energy draining, his body struggling to keep up with the battle around him. Then, just as he thought he might collapse, he heard it. A roar, a battle cry that shook the walls of the citadel. He turned just in time to see Viharari, her eyes glowing with an intensity he had never seen before. She raised her weapon high, and with a powerful wave of energy, she sent the nearest enemies flying back, their bodies crashing into the walls with bone-shattering force. The power of the blast knocked Ethan off his feet, but it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Viharari's breath was heavy, but her eyes were alive with something he had never expected to witness from her. She wasn't just a ruler, she was a warrior, a protector of her people. Ethan pushed himself back to his feet, his determination reignited. If she could fight like this, he could too. He raised his rifle again, his aim steadier now. He wasn't going to let her down. Not now, not ever. With renewed strength, Ethan fought on, side by side with the queen of the Viharan. Together they held the door, their weapons flashing in the dark, their hearts beating as one. The battle was far from over, but Ethan knew one thing for certain. He wasn't alone in this fight. And as long as he stood beside Viharari, he would never back down. The battle raged on. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning flesh. Ethan's arms were heavy, his vision blurred, but he couldn't stop. The enemy kept coming, wave after wave, and he had no choice but to fight. The sound of gunfire, the crackle of energy weapons, and the clash of metal filled his ears. Every breath was a struggle, but he didn't stop. He couldn't, not when Viharari was beside him. The queen moved like a force of nature, her movements a dance of deadly grace. She was a warrior, not just a ruler. Her every strike brought down an enemy with terrifying precision, and yet, despite her power, Ethan could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Her energy was fading, and he knew she couldn't keep this up forever. And neither could he. Ethan stumbled, his foot catching on the uneven floor, his rifle slipping from his grasp. He cursed under his breath, reaching for it, but before he could regain his balance, an enemy warrior was on him, its dark eyes glowing with malice. Without thinking, Ethan lunged, grabbing the enemy's weapon and twisting it from its grasp. He was too slow to react as the warrior's blade came down toward him. It was then that he felt it, a sudden, sharp pain in his side. He gasped, the world spinning as he looked down to see the glint of the blade buried deep in his ribs. Blood poured from the wound, and his legs buckled beneath him. "Ethan," Viharari's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and full of fear. The queen was there in an instant, her weapon flashing as she cut down the enemy that had struck him. She knelt beside him, her silver tendrils glowing softly in the dim light. Her hands hovered over his wound, and for the first time, Ethan saw something in her eyes that he hadn't expected: vulnerability. "Stay with me," she whispered urgently, her voice trembling for the first time since they had met. "You cannot die now. You cannot leave me." Ethan's vision blurred and the world tilted on its axis. The pain was unbearable, and for a moment he wondered if he would black out completely. But then Viharari's hand was on his, warm and steady. She pulled him into her arms, her face soft with something he hadn't seen before, a mixture of fear and tenderness. "Please do not leave me," she repeated, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. "I'm not leaving," Ethan murmured, though his voice was weak, barely a whisper. He could feel his strength slipping away, his mind fading in and out. "I'm not leaving." Viharari's eyes glistened, her voice growing softer as if she were speaking to herself. "You cannot be gone, not like this." She paused, her breath hitching in her chest before she closed her eyes for a moment as if steeling herself for something. Ethan felt the pressure in his side lessen, the blood flow slowing as something strange began to happen. He looked up at her, confused, but she wasn't looking at him. Her focus was on her hands, which hovered just above his wound. He could feel an energy unlike anything he had ever experienced, warm and alive, coursing through his body, healing the damage that had been done. The pain began to subside, and Ethan's breathing became easier. His vision cleared, and he could feel the strength returning to his limbs, though it was slow, like awakening from a long, painful sleep. "What are you doing?" Ethan gasped, his voice shaky but growing stronger. Viharari's gaze shifted to him, her expression unreadable, though there was a deep sadness in her eyes. "I am saving you," she said softly, "but I cannot save you from yourself." Ethan didn't understand, but he didn't have the energy to ask. The pain was still there, but it was dulled now, the sharpness replaced by something like warmth. He looked at Viharari again, his thoughts swirling. I thought you were just a queen," he muttered, his voice growing stronger as he pushed himself up. "I didn't think you could, I didn't think you'd care. For me." Viharari's eyes flickered. She didn't look at him at first, but after a moment she met his gaze, her face softening in a way he hadn't expected. "I thought I didn't either." The words hung between them like an unspoken truth, heavy and fragile. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. He could feel his pulse again, steady, strong. He felt alive. "I'm not some hero," he said, trying to push himself to his feet though his legs still wobbled. "I'm just a soldier. I'm not supposed to be here. Not with you, not in this fight." Viharari stood beside him, steady and unwavering. "You are here because you are who you are." The The way you fight, the way you care, I have never seen anything like it." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't just a queen anymore. She was something more. She was someone who saw him, really saw him. And for the first time since he'd crashed onto this strange world, he felt like he belonged. "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan said, his voice filled with conviction, despite the lingering weakness in his limbs. "Not while there's still a chance to save this place." Viharari nodded, her expression serious, but something in her eyes softened. She reached out and for a moment placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. "You are saving this place," she whispered, "in ways I never thought possible." For a moment they stood there, the sounds of the battle growing distant in the background. Ethan was breathing more easily now, his body healing, slowly but surely. And for the first time, he allowed himself to believe that they could win this, that they would win this. But just as he started to steady himself, the roar of the enemy grew louder. The doors to the chamber they were guarding shuddered, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. "We're not done yet," Ethan said, his voice firm, his muscles still sore but strong enough to fight. He picked up his weapon, the rifle now feeling like an extension of his own body. He turned to Viharari, meeting her gaze. Together they would face whatever was coming. Together they would protect the heart of the Viharan dominion. Ethan's heart was racing, but this time it wasn't fear that fueled him. It was purpose. And in that moment he knew that no matter what happened, he would stand by her side. He wasn't leaving, not now, not ever. And neither would she. The battle had ended hours ago, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any noise before it. The air was thick with smoke and ash. The once bright halls of the citadel were broken, scarred, and dim. The floor was cracked, the walls burned. The ground itself trembled now and then, like the planet was holding its breath. And in the center of that ruin, Ethan Reeves lay still. His blood had soaked into the crystal floor, spreading in thin rivers that caught the faint light. His armor was torn apart, his skin pale. Every breath came shallow and weak, each one sounding more fragile than the last. Viharari knelt beside him. Her silver tendrils hung low, their usual glow dimmed to a dull gray. She pressed one hand over his chest, feeling the faint, flickering pulse beneath. It was weak, so faint she thought she imagined it. He was dying. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking in a way that startled even her. "No, not you, not after all you've done." The healers of the Viharan had gathered around, their faces solemn. They carried crystals of light and bowls of glowing liquid, whispering prayers to the living energy that flowed through their kind. But even they could see it, their queen's desperation. "Your Majesty," one healer said softly, bowing her head, "his body rejects the healing. He is too far gone." Viharari looked up sharply. "Then find another way," she snapped, her voice trembling with anger and grief. "He fought for us, he bled for us. You will not let him die." The healer hesitated. "We have tried everything known to our kind. His body is different. It will not accept our light." Viharari turned her gaze back to Ethan. He looked peaceful, almost like he was asleep. His chest rose and fell weakly. The faint rhythm of his heart echoed in her mind, each beat slower than the last. "I do not understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You came here as a stranger. You had no reason to fight for us. And yet," she reached out, brushing a strand of hair away from his blood-streaked forehead, "you chose to." One of the healers took a step forward. "Your Majesty, if you share your life energy with him, you may not survive the transfer. The human body is unstable. It could destroy you both." Viharari didn't look away from Ethan. "If he dies, what would be left worth ruling?" The healer said nothing. None dared to stop her. She closed her eyes, drawing in a deep breath. Her body began to glow faintly, the light spreading from her chest, flowing through her arms, gathering at her fingertips. The air around her pulsed with warmth, humming with power. The glow spread brighter and brighter, until the whole chamber was bathed in silver-white light. Viharari placed her hands over Ethan's heart. "Please," she whispered, "do not leave me." The energy flowed into him, slowly at first, then faster. The light surrounded them both, blending their forms into a single shape. Ethan's body arched slightly, his breath catching. His pulse fluttered and then, just for a moment, stopped. Viharari gasped, pain shooting through her as the energy lashed back. It felt like 1,000 shards of glass cutting through her veins. But she didn't stop. She refused. "Come back," she said through gritted teeth. "You stubborn human, you don't get to die now." Her hands trembled, her light dimmed, and then Ethan's chest rose. It was faint but real, a breath, then another. The healers gasped, their tendrils flashing in awe. Viharari felt it too, the spark of life, fragile but growing. Ethan's heart was beating again. He was alive. The queen slumped forward, exhausted, her energy drained to the core. Her vision blurred, her body weak, but she didn't care. All that mattered was the soft rhythm of his breath. She leaned close, her forehead resting against his. "You fool," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. "You refuse to die." Hours passed. The healers worked in silence, stabilizing Ethan's body and tending to the queen. Slowly the color returned to his skin, the trembling in his hands ceased. He was weak, yes, but alive. When he finally stirred, the first thing he saw was her. Viharari sat beside his bed, her silver tendrils dim but still beautiful, her eyes heavy with fatigue. She looked smaller somehow, her strength worn thin. But when she saw him open his eyes, her lips curved into the faintest, most fragile smile. "You live," she said softly. Ethan blinked, confused. His voice was hoarse, rough. "I thought I was done for." "You almost were," she replied, her voice low. "But you would not let go." He tried to sit up, but she placed a gentle hand on his chest. "Rest," she said. "You need time." He looked at her, really looked at her, and noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the faint tremor in her hand. "You look worse than me," he said with a weak grin. A small laugh escaped her, quiet but real. "Perhaps, but it was worth it." "Did you save me?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I gave you part of my energy. It was reckless, but I could not let you die, not after what you've done." Ethan was silent for a moment. The weight of her words sank deep. "You shouldn't have risked that," he said quietly. "I'm just a soldier. I'm not worth." Her hand tightened over his. "Do not say that," she interrupted firmly. "You are worth more than you know. You gave my people hope when all was lost. You reminded me of something I had forgotten." He frowned slightly. "What's that?" Viharari's gaze softened, her voice almost a whisper. "That courage is not born from power. It is born from heart." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The alien queen and the human soldier, two lives bound by something neither could explain. Outside, the planet of Viharis was healing. The rival clans had retreated, defeated. The citadel stood scarred but strong, and deep within it, a quiet peace settled over the chamber. Ethan reached for her hand, their fingers brushing. "Guess that makes us both survivors," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Viharari nodded, her eyes glowing faintly again. "No," she said softly, "it makes us both alive." The light between them pulsed once more, warm, steady, and full of something new. Something neither human nor Viharan could name. But it felt real. And for the first time since the crash, Ethan Reeves knew he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. The sun was setting over Viharis Prime, casting long shadows across the citadel as its ancient stone walls began to glow in the soft light of dusk. The air was calm now, the tension that had once gripped the planet fading into the background. The rival clans had been defeated, driven back by the strength and unity of Viharari and her unexpected ally, the human who had come from the stars. Ethan Reeves stood at the balcony of the citadel, looking out over the land that had been forever changed. Below him, the lush, alien jungle stretched for miles, its deep greens and purples bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. The city that surrounded the citadel was quiet, but there was a sense of peace in the air now. The Viharan had won, and with them they had something they had never expected: hope. Viharari appeared beside him, her silver tendrils glimmering in the twilight. She was no longer just the powerful alien queen. She was more than that. She was a leader, yes, but also a survivor just like him. They had both fought and sacrificed. And now they stood together, side by side, on the edge of something new. Ethan looked at her, his voice low but filled with gratitude. "I didn't think I'd make it out of here. Didn't think I'd make it back." Viharari's gaze softened. "And yet here you are." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, here I am." He paused, staring out at the horizon. "You saved me, you know." She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was gentle. "I saved you because you were worth saving. You showed me what it means to be human, and in doing so, you reminded me of something I had forgotten." Ethan turned to her, surprised. "What's that?" "That it's not just power that holds a kingdom together," she said, meeting his gaze. "It's heart. It's the courage to fight even when it seems impossible. You gave me that courage. You gave my people that courage." Ethan's chest tightened at her words, and he looked away for a moment, his mind racing. "I didn't come here looking to make a difference," he admitted quietly. "I was just trying to survive. I thought I was alone in this." Viharari reached out and touched his arm, her fingers warm against his skin. "You are not alone, Ethan Reeves. Not anymore." The connection between them was undeniable now, something far deeper than just gratitude. They had both faced death, fought together, and lived to see the dawn of a new world. And in that shared struggle, they had found something neither had expected: a bond that could not be broken. Ethan looked at her again, his heart pounding. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "Where do we go from here?" Viharari turned, her gaze drifting across the landscape. "The Viharan Dominion is no longer the place it once was. We have been changed by the war, by our losses. But we are also stronger now, more united. You have helped us see that." "By me helping you, you mean by saving your life?" Ethan said, a small grin tugging at his lips. Viharari gave a soft smile in return, the first true smile he had seen from her. It was gentle, sincere. "You did more than that, Ethan. You taught us what it means to fight for something greater than ourselves." Ethan paused, considering her words. He had come to this alien world as nothing more than a soldier, a man looking for a way to survive. But now, after everything that had happened, after the battles, the sacrifices, and the bond they had forged together, he realized how much more this had become. It was no longer just about survival. It was about building something new, something that had meaning. The wind picked up, rustling the trees below, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. The world felt quieter now, more peaceful. Ethan felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that the worst was behind them. But even in the stillness there was an unspoken question that lingered in the air. What would the future hold for him? For Viharari? For the Viharan? He could feel her gaze on him, but he didn't turn. He didn't need to. He knew what she was thinking. They were both survivors of a war that had torn their worlds apart, and now they had a choice to make. They could walk away from this, return to their separate worlds, or they could stand together, side by side, and shape the future they both wanted. He didn't know what that future would look like, but in that moment he realized something that made his heart swell with emotion. He wasn't alone anymore, and neither was she. "I think," he said slowly, his voice filled with a quiet certainty, "I think we can do this. Together." Viharari turned to face him fully, her expression unreadable for a moment. But then her lips curved into that same soft smile, and she nodded. "Yes," she said softly, "together." The stars were beginning to rise in the sky, their soft light twinkling like tiny diamonds scattered across the darkening expanse. The night was coming, but there was no fear in the darkness. There was only peace and hope. The two of them stood there watching the stars, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they had both changed. They had both grown, and in their hearts they knew that they had found something worth fighting for. In the days and weeks that followed, the Viharan Dominion began to rebuild. The rival clans that had once threatened the stability of the planet were now scattered, their power shattered. The Viharan, under the guidance of Viharari and with the support of their unexpected ally, began to forge a new path forward. A path of unity, hope, and courage. Ethan stayed by Viharari's side, not as a soldier but as something more: a friend, a protector, a partner. Together, they led the people of Viharis into a new era, one where strength wasn't measured by power alone, but by the courage to fight for what was right. And as the years passed, the legend of the human who had come from the stars and the queen who had saved him spread across the galaxy. It was a story of survival, of sacrifice, of hearts that refused to surrender. A story of two worlds coming together against all odds to build something that could not be destroyed. A story of the bond that could never be broken. The legend of the human who had fought for more than just his life. He had fought for the future.